And that's how we started building our container garden in the backyard of our house during the pandemic and learning, making mistakes, growing. And as at the last planting season, I don't know what the count on produce that we got is. Hey guys, it's Dr. Mrs. Mom, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I want to get into something that is a hobby of mine, fast become a huge passion of mine. And if you're following me on social media, you probably have seen my journey that I started at the beginning of March, late February, beginning of March. And so what is that? It's gardening. So how did I even get into gardening to start off with? Growing up, my mom and her friends, they all loved plants, like the tropical plants. So your snake plant, pothos. What else did we have? We had a ton of ferns. A bunch of plants. And my mom at some point in her life also used to do wedding florals. If you're following me on my social media, this will make sense because of the things I post and I share about. But it's also something that I have recently, in the last year and a half, gotten into doing as well. And so I remember waking up Saturday mornings. No, this would start like Thursday, Friday. We've gone out, she's scouted for all her roses or chrysanthemums or baby's breath. Okay, because, every wedding floral needs baby's breath. And just her filler flowers, we would go out to the different gardens, and find those. And so my mom would take us on these runs after school. We would stop off at the flower garden or flower market, really is what it was. Huge plots of land where people have planted, all these flowers. And then they had like their cold room, which was freezing. I would shiver in there. But that's where they stored all the cut flowers and things like that. And so this was kind of my exposure or foray into flowers and plants. And I remember, for the wedding Saturday morning, she would then, start making the bouquets, the boutonnieres, the bridesmaids flowers. And it was just a very big part of my childhood. But if I tell you that it wasn't necessarily something that I have focused on since becoming an adult, it just wasn't a part of, I was on the academic track doing all the things. And so whenever I left my job, no, this was before I left my job, actually, while I was on maternity leave, I started, doing flowers for bridal showers. And it was just because someone, Stephanie, hey girl, she had sent me a message asking me if it's something that I would do. And I did it. And I was like, oh, wow, this is kind of cool. This is something that I would do. So anyways, that's how the floral thing came back into my life. However, during the pandemic, after I got married, moved to Canada, my husband and I guess it was just one of our outlets. He loves farming, like on a large scale. And I, had always been intrigued by obviously plants because of my exposure with my mom. But also I remember categorically when this friend of ours at church gave me these homegrown tomatoes, my life was never the same again. And so I'd always looked forward to being able to grow my own food because then I would know what's in it. And it was just tastier and juicier. So anyways, when we moved into our house, we decided, you know what? We're going to start with a little container garden in the back. Nothing crazy. What did we use the most as Nigerians? Tons of tomatoes, tons of pepper, bell pepper, as well as habaneros. And that's what we set out to do. I was like, while we're at it, let me just add a lettuce or two. Let's see what happens. And that's how we started building our container garden in the backyard of our house during the pandemic and learning, making mistakes, growing. And as at the last planting season, I don't know what the count on produce that we got is, but okay, let me think. We did 3 different species of tomatoes. So we had a Roma variety, we had a Manitoba, and we had a bush stick variety, so the big hamburger ones. And then we did the bell peppers, red, green, yellow. We also did habaneros, which are Nigerians will know them as nsuka pepper. It's hot. Okay, it's hot. So we did those, and then I also did lettuce, carrots, baby carrots, green onions, yellow potatoes. I also grew some sweet potatoes. Is there anything I'm missing? I feel like there's something I'm missing. I said lettuce already. Oh, and then obviously we always do like herbs. So parsley, thyme, oregano, mint. Yeah. And cooking with fresh herbs. Listen, if you've never cooked with fresh herbs, let this be your PSA. Go get some fresh herbs. Make your goat meat with fresh thyme. I know the dried stuff, it's good too, but the fresh stuff, don't say I didn't do anything for you. Okay. Anyways, so that's what we've always grown. In the process of obviously doing all of this, I am a woman of faith. And every time that we would do our planting season, I would always leave with like these nuggets, right? Like these life lessons. And it made so much sense to me why God, in his infinite mercy and wisdom, decided to use a lot of gardening and farming illustrations and references whenever he would teach. And so I kind of would share all of those tidbits here and there on my Instagram story at a time. And as I started thinking through, okay, how can I collate all of these things into something that is tangible? Because I'm like, they're just bits and pieces from everywhere. How do I collate them into something that's tangible? And that's where I believe the Holy Spirit gave me the idea for creating a planting guide. Now, it wouldn't just be a random planting guide, but it would be a planting guide that is infused with tons of personal stories of what's happened to us while we've gone through this process, but also lessons, practical life lessons, faith lessons that we've picked up through this journey of gardening. And so that's kind of the birthplace for the planting with Dr. Mrs. Mom guide and lessons. That's where that came from. And obviously, being a person of faith, I see all these references. I'm seeing all the nuances of pruning and seed time and harvest time. And it's just illuminating so much for me. And I'm like, you know what? I was going to say, I'm like, this is what I should do, but no. Seeing all of those things, I didn't connect the dots necessarily, but one day I was going on a walk, a cold winter walk, okay? And the Holy Spirit just said to me, you need to make a devotional, a companion devotional that's going to align with the chapters of the guide. And I'm like, So it got me thinking, but I'm like, maybe this is for a later time. But the more I started to think about it, I brought up my laptop and I just could not stop typing. And I'm like, okay, there's something here. There's something here. And that's how the companion devotional came to be. Like I said, I've always loved plants. I've always loved the idea of gardening, like it's something that brings me so much happiness. And so I remember, I think it was maybe a year or two ago, a friend of mine, Ruth, who is also on this planting gardening journey as well, she said, girl, have you heard of like cut flowers? And I'm like, cut flowers? Like, what is that? I didn't know of the industry like that. And so this year, after doing tons and tons of research, I have turned into my mom. Cannot believe I'm saying this. And it could be like my mom, but on like steroids. So it's like a version 2.0 of my mom. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I am starting my own home cut flower garden. And I'm really, really excited. I've sown the seeds. I've done a ton of research. And if there's one thing I know, you plan, but nature is going to do what nature is going to do. And you're going to learn from that. And so, I'm really, really excited about this cut flower garden that I'm starting up, and I will be taking you on that journey. So follow me on Instagram and TikTok, so you can see, and shorts as well, so you can see the update to the cut flower garden. My hope is that as we get through the spring and the summer seasons, that you'll also be able to come into the garden with me, and I can show you some of the things that we're growing, how they're growing, any of the issues that we're facing. I'm really looking forward to going from seed to something beautiful. Listen, even if it's just one flower, I don't understand the psychology of, and if you're, a psychologist out here, let me know. But the psychology of seeing something going from a seed so tiny, like not even bigger than a grain of rice, much like, or rather smaller than a grain of rice, much smaller than a grain of rice, but seeing it grow and morph into a huge flower that is beautiful. And not only is it beautiful, it's also acting as a food source for nature all around us. I feel like this is me just doing my little part into being a good steward of the earth. So if this is something that excites you, that you enjoy, this is the kind of content that you like to see on social media, then come along with me as I start my first home cut flower garden. I look forward to being on this journey with you guys. If you have a cut flower garden, if you're into this stuff, type the type of flowers that you like, and let's see, how does it grow? Is it something I can add? At this point, I might be at 17 flowers for my first time, which is a little wild. But I feel like at some point, at least one thing's going to grow, right? So come along with me on the journey and let's see how it goes.